All right, this is it. The moment you have all been waiting for. The finals of the 2019 Magic the Gathering Old School World Championship, coming to you sort of somewhat in the past from Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm Brian Weissman. I'm here with my dear friend Sam Tang, and we're going to be calling the action of the first game of the finals. My opponent is playing essentially a mirror deck, an Esper Control deck. I am, of course, also playing an Esper Control deck called the deck that we've talked about at length and you've seen in these other games. Without further ado, I'm just going to jump straight to the action, Sam.
Yeah, absolutely. I think mulligans have already been resolved, and I think Jonathan's already getting going here, and so this is game one of the finals.
Game one underway already, actually. And if you look at Jonathan's hand, he has a Mox Sapphire and a Tundra in play. It's a really good draw, honestly. All you really want in this matchup at the beginning is mana.
Right.
And you want stable mana. You want land mana. You don't want a bunch of artifact mana. You can fall into a really deep hole early if you play a bunch of artifact mana and they happen to have drawn a disenchant heavy hand. Even to the point where they might counterspell a Mox or something if you're looking weak. Good players will definitely smell that out. So he's got plenty of land. I see a scrub land, a Tundra. I see a Chaos Orb and what looks like at least one blue permission card. I think it might be Power Sync, it might be Counterspell. But either way, it's an awesome hand. It's not the best hand you could possibly have. You could have Ancestral Recall into Lotus and Soul Ring and Mind Twist or whatever, right? But it's high range, certainly, and he's got to be happy looking at that. I, on the other hand, don't actually recall exactly what I have, but I certainly have a keepable 7, which means that I have a fair amount of mana in my hand. And you'll notice that Jonathan won the die roll, I believe, and elected to go first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A decision that, knowing what we were playing, and I knew he was playing an Esper Control deck. I did not know all the contents of it. But I did know he was playing an Esper Control deck, and I would have elected to go second.
Yeah.
Had I had the choice. So when he won the die roll and elected to go first, I was totally happy.
Yeah.
It's a win-win for me, basically.
Right.
Because he's just down a card, and the reason why I go second is in this format, in this matchup, the range of things that he can do to me fast are extremely low.
Right.
And most of the time, they just happen on turn 1 or turn 2 anyway. Mm-hmm. It's Ancestral Recall early, Demonic Tutor into Lotus Mind Twist or something. You don't even get set up in advance of that anyway.
Mm-hmm.
It all is going to hit you on turn 1 or turn 2 anyway, before you can counter. And the extra card matters a huge difference, because we're really just playing a mana war here. The whole game is just going to be about mana and containment, for the most part, pre-sideboard. And in that situation, the person with more mana, the person who has to blink second almost always wins. Because the other guy is eventually going to get into a position where he's out of land drops. And he's got 7 cards in his hand and he's staring at 5 untapped blue mana in a format that has Mind Twist in it, and Brain Geyser, and Regrowth, and various other insane restricted cards. And faced with the choice of tapping out to play a Jam Day Tome or tapping 4 of your 5 mana to play a Tome versus just discarding and throwing a Swords into the graveyard, which is what you'd likely do, you're going to take the latter option, of course.
Mm-hmm.
You're never going to go and just raw dog a Tome or something out there. So you just got to hit land drops. How do you hit land drops? Well, I know one way. You play with more mana. And the other way is you draw more cards than the other guy. That's how you hit land drops. And going second means you get an extra card. Totally worth it in the mirror matchup. And so, of course, when he goes first, I'm elated.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see how it goes from there. He's definitely going to keep his hand. And you can see Chaos Orb. He's thinking about it right now. And it looks like he actually elected not to play the orb turn 1. So he's representing, and now we can see his full hand. Counterspell, Power Sync, Swords to Plowshares, and of course Tundra and the Chaos Orb that we were talking about before. So Sam, what do you think about the decision not to play Chaos Orb and to hold up 2 different permission spells on turn 1?
Well, he can't do both. And then also if he gets Strip Mined or the Sapphire gets blown up, then he's just kind of like, oh well, right? So I feel like he either doesn't want to use Orb right now because he wants to use Orb on something else. Like maybe that's like the way he's thinking, like his style. It's like this Orb is reserved for, and then he has a list of cards. And then he's like, but my counter spells are reserved for, and then he has a list of cards. So that's kind of what I'm thinking is what he's doing. But also I don't know. I don't play a ton of old school, but also I don't feel like I would put Orb out there this early. Unless he was specifically knowing that you were racing for something, but that's also game 1 of the round. So he kind of wants to feel you out. That's what I would do. Yeah,
there's certainly arguments for doing both. This is the thing. It's honestly a little bit of an encapsulation of the complexity of old school and why, while the deck construction can be solved, the play of these decks is extremely complicated and intricate. You're facing really consequential decision trees very early on in the game, as early as turn 1, because Moxes exist.
Mm-hmm.
In modern formats, other than probably Commander, where you have Soul Ring and Crypt and lots of diamonds and stuff, there's lots of ways to get early mana. In a lot of formats, the plays are very deterministic based on the mana curve. You design the deck to have a mana curve, so you know that you have one of two 1-drops to play on turn 1, and you know which one is better. And then you've got a 2-drop on turn 2, and then turn 3 you're casting Oko. You know what I mean? It's like the decisions are pretty obvious. In this situation, there's so much subterfuge, there's so much hidden information. There's a lot of singletons in these decks too. So there's a ton of randomness also.
Mm-hmm.
And all of those things combined do not make the plays super obvious a lot of the time. You have to be extremely analytical and thoughtful about every play you make. So yeah, he plays Sapphire Tundra. That gives him access to Counterspell in turn 1. But to counter what? What am I likely to counter? Let's say I have Ancestral Recall in my opening hand. Am I likely to just walk it into UU? If I'm going to do that, I'm going to play it during his upkeep, right? So at least by playing 2 mana, he has that as an option. But it's very unlikely I would do that anyway. Why on earth would I let him counterspell an Ancestral Recall with a Power Sink or something? Playing the Orb is interesting because if he plays the Orb, I have the ability to kill it. I can kill it right away, but I can kind of always kill it anyway because of the way that you can stop Chaos Orb uniquely.
Right.
The only artifact in all of Magic that you can essentially stifle with a disenchant.
Right.
Because of a weird rules loophole. I'll repeat that again, that the Orb needs to be on the battlefield when the flip resolves. If you destroy it while in response to its activation before it's flipped, it will not generate an effect.
Right.
So if he plays the Orb there and I just kill it, I'm tapped out. It makes me vulnerable to him untapping and potentially playing a Disrupting Scepter off the top or something, or an Ancestral Recall that I can no longer counter. He forces a card out of my hand. But if he plays the Orb and I don't kill it, he's ahead for sure. Because now he has an untapped Orb just sitting there. If I have a Disenchant, I can kill it, but he can even protect the activation later anyway, and he's invested the 2 mana immediately. If I'm in if I'm in Jonathan's case, in his situation, I almost certainly just play the Orb.
Right.
I just play it. I'm not interested in countering on turn 1 anyway. And now I've got an Orb in play. That is a very difficult problem for my deck to solve. It just changes everything. It's like that situation where your opponent has that pesky Nivenrel's Disc just sitting there.
Right.
What do you do?
Yeah.
Eventually, you know you're going to have to just like get 3 for 1 by it. What do I invest in? Do I invest in 4 mana and a Jamie Tome when the disenchant's already on the table? It totally screws with my head and my game. That's way more advantageous than either hiding it or the situation where I just tap out and destroy the Orb, which I can do anyway. So we should definitely play the Orb here, I think. I think that just passing the turn with 2 mana untapped, it feels good. But if you understand the mirror matchup, then you know to just play the Orb. And if I can kill it, I can kill it. You got to recall anyway. And there's no imperative to use it anyway.
Yeah.
So we'll continue on. I play Underground Sea. And I have a Sapphire of my own.
Yeah. And then here you are. You're like, does it resolve?
And we get to see my hand. Thank you, Daniel. It's been a while.
Got a pearl.
Yeah.
Barely.
Okay, we'll swing back.
Barely.
I think he'll show me my hand in a second. Well, we got a glimpse of it.
I know you have a pearl.
Yeah, we know I have a pearl. Okay, I'm casting Mox Pearl here also. So why am I playing 2 Moxes here? Why do you think I'm playing 2 Moxes if you had to guess?
Maybe you're baiting out some counter spells.
Potentially, yeah, he might counterspell. Yeah. We've certainly seen in the first game that he likes to disenchant Moxes early. That's actually usually correct, but you got to read the room. Same thing for Strip Mine. That was very consequential. In other matches too, right, where people often will blow Strip Mines early. They'll use them recklessly, just thinking they're somehow getting ahead, but you're gambling your opponent. You're gambling your opponent doesn't have more mana. Right?
So you're trying to get ahead.
Well, I'm playing the Mox here, and honestly, there's a number of reasons for it. I'm always thinking about cards like Balance and Time Twister. It's the way that you can get an advantage by going first in the format. If you're playing a control deck and you want to go first, again, I don't know his deck. But maybe by him going first, I can kind of assume that he might have both Balance and Time Twister in his deck. A deck with those 2 cards may, in fact, want to go first, even in the mirror. Because if you can spill a bunch of stuff in play and then balance, you just kind of Mind Twist them for 4 right away. If I play the Pearl, it's insurance that I'm much less vulnerable to both Balance and Time Twister. And to me, that has more value than holding the card in my hand for a rainy day or as a surprise.
Right.
And you notice that I'm playing the Pearl also alongside a blue-black source. So it's a bit of a telegraph I might have a Tundra in play. The fact that I led with Underground Sea certainly means that I value that land the least. That's a tell in the other direction that I actually have a second one in my hand versus, say, a Tundra or a City. So I'm exposing at the beginning of the game the land that I feel is the least important among the lands in my hand. And the Pearl I'm playing, I think, just as a contingency against him doing kind of like a balance twister thing. And I pass the turn back to Jonathan. He pulls a disenchant off the top, does not draw land. And you can just see instantaneously his body language changes. And I'm watching him the whole time. I watch him draw the Tundra, and I pay attention to where the card comes out of his hand. Did he just play the Tundra off the top, or did he pull it out of his hand? I watch him pull it out of his hand and not off the top of his deck, because he doesn't hesitate. He doesn't blend it or anything. He just shows me that he had Tundra in his hand. And then I watch his body language. He shifts uncomfortably afterward. And my brain goes, interesting. What does that shift mean? Does it mean that he's unhappy with his hand now? He is unhappy with his hand. He wants more mana, right? That's what defines this. So it's just a data point, and we continue. So he's thinking right now probably about, okay, so he's thinking about main step, disenchant, and ultimately decides not to. I play a second Underground Sea, so remember that's in line. That's in line with the first land that I played, of course. And I think actually, in retrospect, I think that the reason why I played the Pearl was because I was giving myself the option to Divine Offering or Disenchant. I certainly have one of those cards, and I'm playing it because if he does kill the Pearl, I'll probably return the favor by killing the Mox. And I don't have the ability to do that if I don't play the Pearl. I might just have Disenchant or Divine Offering stranded in my hand for 5, 6, 7 turns while he pulls ahead on mana. So it gives me the ability to assign some tit for tat. So he draws another card, and he draws Soul Ring and plays it without putting it on the stack. He just throws it into play. It's strange again. So you see him shuffling his hand, and he just passes the turn back somewhat dejectedly, because he knows the Soul Ring is not long for this world, and lo and behold, I do have a kill for it. And he thinks about protecting it. So do you think you're protected here? What's the play here, Sam?
If you protect it, well, he can't. Well, he could power sink it for like 3.
Yes.
But if he just counters it, then what does he really want that Soul Ring for? That's like, why is he protecting the Soul Ring? That's one less. To be honest, I don't know. I'm just kind of looking at this, and I was like, I don't really know.
Again, this is a complicated format.
I'm kind of like, I don't know, right? Like,
it's one of the coolest things about old school. It's the fact that the cards themselves are so simple.
Yeah.
It's very chess-like. Chess is a very simple game. You know what I mean? You can teach it to a 6-year-old, a 5-year-old in 20, 30 minutes. And now you know all the rules of chess. You're nowhere near understanding the strategy of chess. You have no understanding of the game, but you have knowledge of the rules. Old school is like that. You can teach someone to play old school really fast. It's simple. And yet it is a lifetime mastery thing. It's in some ways the hardest Magic format, because you just have to account for so much, and so few of the decisions are automatic and present themselves the way that they are now, where you're just kind of following a mana curve. It's like, well, I've got 5 mana and I have Tevish Zat in my command zone. I guess I play Tevish Zat. That's not hard. And if they kill it, I'm going to have 7 mana next turn, and then I'll just play Tevish Zat again. You know what I mean? And it wins the game for me automatically. This game is all about just position, understanding the value of every resource, constant, evolving, malleable threat assessment the whole time. He plays Soul Ring, and when I kill it, he does not power sink me, which is an insanely, honestly bad play, in my opinion.
Interesting.
To be fair.
Yeah.
What is the power sink for than but this situation?
Right.
It's a perfect opportunity to use it. What's the worst possible thing I could do? Mind twist his hand. Okay, yes, that is the worst possible thing. You can't assume I'm going to mind twist him yet. You just can't assume your opponent always has it, particularly not this early. And if I mind twist him, yeah, it sucks. He might lose 3 of his 5 cards. Or I guess he'd have the power sink gone. He'd recover and he'd continue on. The game's not instantly over. And I have to have Mind Twist. What's the second worst thing that could happen? Probably Brain Geyser for 3. That sucks, but it's not the end of the world. And now I'm tapped out. And he's got 5 mana and potentially could top deck his own Brain Geyser or Mind Twist or something back. And the other option, the other worst thing that could happen is a jam Tome, and he has a disenchant in his hand anyway. So by not power syncing here, he just loses how much of his mana? 40% of his mana. And now the power sync is stuck in his hand. And he can't cast counterspell and power sync to any effect in the same turn.
Right.
So power sync here 100% of the time.
Yeah.
He does not do that. He lets it happen. See him thinking about it, and then he just chucks it in the bin.
And even if he doesn't power sync, he can tit for tat disenchant your Pearl.
Yeah.
Yeah, he just used the mana versus just letting it die.
So I play a factory. And you notice the cadence that I'm playing here too. These lands are coming out of my hand quick. And I'm kind of actually just telegraphing to him. It's almost like I'm telegraphing to him, don't fuck with my mana. Like, I have plenty of mana in my hand. So we're just going to develop here, and we're just going to play this game. So I play a factory. I'm up to 5. And again, this is a battle of mana. He doesn't elect to disenchant. End of turn, draws his strip mine. And he thinks for a second. Passes the turn back. Totally correct. Because he needs air. This is a resource battle. And you can decide when to use strip mine. I pay 2. And I put a Fellwar Stone on the stack. So I'm obviously asking him if he wants to do anything. And Jonathan lets it resolve and then offs it during my end step, I believe. And I can certainly let that go. He draws another Tundra, bringing him up to 5 mana total, so we're in parity. And now down comes Orb. And he's leaving the strip mine untapped, so he's using 2 blue, but it doesn't really matter that much. So if you notice, my Pearl was tapped there. I had no ability to counterplay against the Orb if he activated it, because I was out of white mana. So leaving the Orb on the table versus activating it, what do you think about that? He does have a strip mine in play, and I only have 5 mana. And last turn I did not play a land, right? I drew and played Fellwar Stone. So what do you think about not activating the Orb when I had, or waiting to allow me to untap my white mana before activating the Orb and not using the strip mine?
He could have just gotten your Pearl off the board. He could have just activated, and then because he knows, well, because you don't have white mana, you can't disenchant. You can't Divine Offering. So like the Orb is safe. So he just
the Orb's safe if he kills the Pearl, but then the Orb's gone, so it getting disenchanted doesn't really matter that much either way.
Right.
But I think that playing the Orb here is fine, and I think not using it to kill my mana is fine. He can drop me down to 3. You know, the play clearly would be to kill Underground Sea and Pearl if you were to use the strip mine in the Orb, and that drops me down. But I still have 2 blue mana. Factory's still floating around and stuff. And we're very early in the game. I haven't drawn a ton of lands. I've only drawn 3. So it would seem a little bit premature to go for that play. So we'll see what happens. So I play my own strip mine now. And
he fires it off.
And he makes this completely bizarre play. I play a strip mine and I pass the turn. And
he just fires it
Jonathan strip mines me at end of turn. Okay, so I'm just going to ask hypothetically, why on earth would you do that? Why would you strip mine your opponent at the end of the turn? What is that meant to accomplish? Why would you not untap, draw a card, and then see with more information whether or not you in fact want to use strip mine to kill a factory? And a factory of all cards versus an Underground Sea when he's got Swords to Plowshares in his hand. I'd be curious to know what his thought process was. But strip mine at the end of the turn is just like, what are you even doing?
And also, wasn't he more protective of his mana earlier? And then now without the strip mine, he's down a land. So,
It's such an insane play. He reduces his total mana base by 20%, having not drawn the top card of his deck to see whether or not that mana matters.
Right.
And it's totally inconsequential. It's not like it takes me down to 1 blue mana or something and now I can't defend.
Right.
It's not like it kills my singular white source. He kills a Mishra's Factory with a strip mine. May come back to haunt him a bit.
Yeah.
Let's continue.
Yeah.
So he draws a card, and lo and behold, after blowing a strip mine, he just draws another one. And then immediately strip mines me again. And we'll see if he uses the orb here. And he activates the orb. So in response, of course, I have disenchant for it. And I need to do that to protect my land. And Jonathan counters back, which I completely agree. And you can see I'm already casting my counterspell before he's even done adding his to the stack, because we both know that Pearl's vitally important here and we're going to fight over it.
Right. It's also interesting because he did strip mine to the factory, strip mine again. He had 2 strip mines. He did not target your strip mine.
Oh, with his own strip mine?
Yeah.
Yeah, it would not be...
Or he just didn't go for both of your underground seas. Like, there were different ways.
Well, he did go after underground sea 1 with strip mine, and then he went after the other one with the orb.
Oh, with the orb.
With the orb. But the thing is, I guess he's killing off the second blue mana with the... Because he figures he's going to draw into a disenchant to kill the Pearl.
But he could have done strip mine, both strip mines to both underground seas, and then orb to Sapphire.
Yeah, and the truth of the matter is that the sequencing is wrong anyway. Before he strip mines, Jonathan should play the orb and activate it to see what happens.
Right.
Before you use the strip mine.
Right.
Find out whether or not that matters or not.
You might need it to power sync.
Right. Or if he's unable to kill my land with the orb, the other strip mine matters a lot less.
Yeah.
You may need the strip mine for something else. Maybe he wants to kill my strip mine with it or something.
Right, exactly.
Right? So I counterspell back, and now Jonathan is tapped out anyway. So he's got a vulnerability, and I check his cards in hand, and he's only got a couple. But my hand is not huge anymore either. So now I'm going to return the favor. Play more mana. I'm smelling blood here. I'm getting a read now that his hand is, that he's completely out of mana and he's out of resources. Plus, as you know, I've just used a disenchant to kill off the orb to protect my land. And I'm strip mining preemptively exactly for what he just drew right there. Literally exactly that range. I don't have disenchant anymore, which means that I cannot let him be at 4. If he plays a Jam Tome, I could lose.
Right.
So I strip mine him, and lo and behold, the next card off the deck is Jam Tome. Obviously, I don't know that. But one turn ahead, right? It's having that little foresight, these little tiny things. If Jam Tome comes down right here, I could just literally die on the spot. By strip mining there, recognizing that he has that vulnerability, and because he aggressively strip mined me, he doesn't have 4 mana. Passes the turn back. Seeing him jumping around and flipping his hand again. I pass the turn. I'm watching him closely, and he hits 4 mana. But now he doesn't trust that he can ram it. He's just afraid again to tap out. I play a factory. He draws the Hive. We're just going to play draw go here real quick for a bit. I ask him how many cards are in hand. He says 4. I believe I have 5. So I'm just shoring up my mana right now, and now I've got a second source of white in play. So feeling a little bit more secure. And right now I believe I have Counterspell in my hand. Pretty sure that I do. Although Daniel has not done me the kindness. So he draws an Underground Scene without hesitation, without hiding it, throws it into play again. I pass the turn back. He draws Recall. 5 cards in hand for Jonathan now. We go back and forth. And in one more turn of this, I'm gonna explain what I'm thinking now. Okay, so Jonathan draws again. He draws Disenchant. So I have a critical card in my hand now. The most generally decisive card in the Esper mirror, and really in any control mirror in this format. We've talked about it plenty. I have Mind Twist in my hand now. And now the game shifts. How do I resolve this Mind Twist? What range can I account for with Jonathan in order to use Mind Twist? Mind Twist I know will probably win the game. It usually does. Certainly by mid-game. It's almost impossible to recover from. But how to get it to resolve? You can put 1,000,000 mana into play, and you can hope to just cast it later and protect it 2 or 3 times. But that's a very indeterminate game state. I'm thinking something else right now, and I'm paying very close attention to how many blue sources does Jonathan have. That's going to matter very much soon. I've already got that in my mind now. I'm now thinking about, okay, so do I strip mine him if I draw a strip mine again? Do I wait to draw another counterspell? I'm not going to be able to Mind Twist for much. His hand is already really big and still be able to defend it. What range of cards does he have? How do we adjust the situation and the strategy if he gets to 4 blue mana or to 5? It's all going to matter, and I'm going to need to be malleable and think about a way to get the Mind Twist to resolve without just getting lucky. So I think right now, so I play a Soul Ring here. I believe I have 5 or 6 cards in hand right now. I think it's 5. you can see 5 mana now versus 8. So I have a 3 mana advantage. My deck actually only has 1 extra mana over Jonathan's.
Mm-hmm.
He actually has more lands than I do because he's not running 2 of the Moxes and no Fellers. So he's going to burn another Disenchant to kill the Sol Ring. What do you think about that play?
He's probably valuing his power sink. He's like, I've got a power sink. I don't have a counter spell. I don't want Brian to be able to use the Sol Ring to pay for a power sink.
I like that thought, and I think that's exactly right. Mm-hmm. I think that's a perfect read. And I think based on that, the Disenchant makes a lot of sense. It is opening himself up to a lot of future vulnerability, of course. He's now lost 3 of his 5 non-recursive outs against Jam Tomes.
Mm-hmm.
He's got to know I've got at least 2 of them, maybe even more. And I am known for disrupting scepters also. He's certainly familiar with the card because he's playing with 1 copy of it. So he's putting himself in a long-term vulnerability against Jam Tome and hedging that it's not going to come down. And one of the ways that he can prevent it from coming down, of course, is by power syncing it with when I have fewer mana.
Right.
So I think the play makes a lot of sense, and I would have done it as well. You can't let the guy have Sol Ring.
Mm-hmm.
So he draws another island. Now there's 4 blue sources in play, and that's going to complicate things a lot with the Mind Twist plan, of course, because now he can represent counterspell, or counterspell mana drain.
Right.
I don't know if he has power sync in his deck.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of wince a little bit internally because I'm trying to set this Mind Twist up. I just got to get more mana into play first.
Right.
And I would have gone for it probably the next turn. Mm-hmm. If he had been on 3 blue, I would have gone for a Mind Twist plus counterspell to take his hand out with that Sol Ring. So he prevented that disaster. All right, so I believe I'm up to 6, and here's where the strategy shifts again. I begin to think long term. We're now kind of settled into that mid-rangey control mirror where we're done with the strip mine shenanigans. There aren't factories attacking unabated. Both of our hands are pretty big, and we have lots of blue mana in play. So how do you break the stalemate?
You're going to need a Library of Alexandria, or you're going to have to fight over that Gem Tome to be able to pull ahead.
Exactly. It's a perfect read, and I need to get a card advantage engine on play.
Right.
Online. I need to get one out. I need to somehow present a threat.
Right. Somebody has to pull ahead at some point.
Right. And I know that a Jam Tome is a pretty good threat given how many outs he's already lost against it. But it costs 4.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he has Mind Twist in his hand.
Right.
Right? I don't know his deck. I certainly don't know his hand. He's got a lot of cards in hand, and I can assume that some of them are removal for creatures probably by this point. But I don't know the range of what he has. I only know that he's got 4 blue mana in play, and that's a problem. I don't have mana short. I don't really have any way to force him to do anything. But I do have 1 card that doesn't require me to cast it. Mm-hmm. You already mentioned it, the Library of Alexandria.
Library, yeah.
Look at how many cards I have in hand and how many are in play. I have 6 in play. I think I have 6 in hand, and my graveyard is roughly, you can kind of tell, right? 2 disenchants, 2 strip mines. It's about parity. I have about 8. We'll just assume it's 8. So 8 in the graveyard, 6 in play is 14, plus my hand is 6. I have 20 cards total. There are 40 cards remaining. One of them is library. So I have a 1 in 40 chance of drawing a library, 2.5%. But every time I draw a card, that percentage goes up. Pretty soon it's going to be 3. Then it's going to be 4%. How long can you fade a 4% outcome? Not that long, honestly, on average. And on average, I'm going to draw the library once by the time I hit 30 cards. So we're 10 cards away from library on average. We might be a lot closer. And he has fewer outs. So my game plan entirely shifts now to draw the Library of Alexandria and use the Library of Alexandria to put pressure on Jonathan to blink first so that he's going to have to tap out mana, and I'm going to be able to win the game with Mind Twist. So we'll see if Jonathan thinks the same strategy. He has, I believe, 6 cards in hand. Does he also recognize that library is a way to win the game? So he draws Swords to Plowshares. He's got 6 cards in hand. Passes back to me. I draw up, I believe, to 7. And I pass the turn back. So now we wait. He draws Disenchant. He's also got 7. So this is this Drago phase of the game. And now, clearly, I'm at 8 cards, and I play a Tundra from my hand that I did not just draw. And I pass the turn back to Jonathan. And he's got that Disenchant sitting on the top of his hand. So the question is, does he fire off the Disenchant right now? He has 7 cards in hand. Do you throw away another Disenchant, and you haven't seen 1 tome yet, to kill one of your opponent's 7 mana sources? Or do you just take it on the chin and throw away his swords that you don't really need anyway? Well, we'll see. He may be disciplined and just wait, hold on to it, and see what happens. Certainly it makes the power sink better to keep trying to contain my mana, but at a certain point, you don't have any more disenchants.
I'm surprised why he doesn't just play out his own tome and just,
I think that he's worried about me mana draining it, probably. Being reduced down to just 2 mana and not even being able to stop a power sink because all he's got is 2 mana with this power sink, right? I'm sorry, not able to stop a Mind Twist. Right, he can't stop it with Mind Twist if he taps down to just 2. He can't stop it. God, I keep screwing up. He can't stop it with Power Sync without 2. Okay, so he kills off the Pearl at the end of my turn. Decides that he doesn't want to take the risk, and he's rewarded immediately. He hits a factory. But it's not a blue source. He's still at 4 blue. And based on the fact that I've been sandbagging for a bunch of turns, I likely have more land drops in my hand. You can see John flicking past the Hive. Down comes City of Brass. So we still have mana parity, 7-7. So even right now, right? No one's cast Ancestral Recall. He just throws an Underground Sea into play, and I wince again because I think, oh man, 5 blue sources now. This window of opportunity to close the door with the library is ending rapidly. If he gets 6 blue mana sources in play, we're going to have a really long and grindy game. But I play a Ruby, which of course I'm just playing to get a card out of my hand. I'm sitting at 8. I'm sitting at 8 until the Ruby comes down. And he asks me, I think, if I've got 7. Jonathan has 6. So in Jonathan's position, again, because library is going to break the stalemate, he should be at 7. There's no real reason to put the Mishra's Factory into play. It should just be sitting in his hand right now so that if he draws library, it's instantly active. And I don't force him to, say, counter something which keeps him below 7. So I'm still thinking, and I'm just patient, and I'm watching him. And he just throws a scrub land into play. It's not a blue source. So shrinks his hand size, makes his hand size more predictable, makes him more vulnerable to Mind Twist to put another mana source into play.
I wonder if he's only doing that because he wants to power up his power sink.
Yeah, it's got to be the only thing. But it's also an interesting thing about the card. The fact that power sink requires you to have more mana than your opponent untapped is one of the reasons why it's not great. It has the ability to do cool things, but having to leave a ton of mana untapped all the time, having to play every land you draw, just overextending onto the board to get eaten up by Armageddon, for example, or to get killed by Balance or Mind Twist, for example, those things are huge vulnerabilities that you introduce when you put a card in your deck that requires you to have tons of mana to make it work. I draw again. Play a factory out of my hand again. Pass back. 9-9.
And that percentage is slowly ticking upward. Because
every time.
Drawing.
Exactly. There's 9 cards, assuming that we have parity of graveyards, 10 versus 10. I have 19 and 7, where I'm at 26. So there's 34 cards left. One of them is library. Jonathan draws. What the?
Fast. Just puts it right out.
Yeah. How did he even see that it was a factory? He just flipped it like instantly. I need to see that again. It's just very interesting.
Super fast.
Yeah. I guess he glances at it as he draws. Yeah, he saw it there clearly. It's just the camera angle is weird. So now he's got 2 factories in play. And I draw my, I guess at this point, 27th card. Boom.
There it is.
Library arrives right on schedule. And of course, my hand is 7 cards.
Yep.
It is instantaneously, we go to DEFCON 1 for him.
No.
Jonathan's faced this card a million times. He's an established old school player. He knows that in the control mirror, an unstopped library is death. You will not win. You cannot beat a free Howling Mine every turn. It's just impossible.
Yeah.
And he's already got 2 Strip Mines and Chaos Orb gone. He could be 20 cards from the next Strip Mine because he used those early. He used 2 Strip Mines. Imagine if he's got a Strip Mine in play and I have 1 extra factory. How different is the game? Instead, he has no defense against Library of Alexandria. And I played to one of my outs and I just drew it. So now Jonathan is in full-on panic mode. Man, I remember thinking inside when I drew the library, I just go, fuck yes. There it is. Deal with this, Jonathan. So I'm just going to draw right away. Of course, my hand is loaded up with mana.
Right.
And I play Black Lotus, which he can't kill since he's got his 2 disenchants gone. So Jonathan immediately passes the turn back, and I'm sitting there leaning forward thinking, I think I got this now. But we'll see. There's a lot of blue mana to fight through. So what does Jonathan do? This is his board state. 7 cards in hand. He has 9 mana in play, I believe, or 10 now? Yeah, it's 10. 10 mana in play. 2 strip mines and orb in the graveyard. He has recall and power sink. What's the play here, Sam? What do you do?
You've got to recall for strip mine.
You do. You have to do it. You have to recall for strip mine. But what do you tap to recall for strip mine? What do you tap?
You are probably going to want to tap those factories. You're probably going to want to tap your sapphire.
Yes. Why do you want to tap your sapphire?
Because if you don't, then you're just going to get that sapphire blown up, and then you're going to lose the counter war. You're going to lose your counter war.
That may in fact happen. That may have been what I've been setting up this whole time, smelling blood turn after turn, thinking all I need to do is to get him to 3 blue mana. That's all I need to do. And if I can play the library, he's going to have to go tap down to potentially 4 blue mana. But if he leaves the sapphire untapped, it's going to be 3.
Right.
And all I need is 3 because he can't counter twice.
Yeah.
And I can handle every other range. So he sits there and he looks at his hand. He knows he has to recall. The question is, do you recall for 1 or for 2? Do you get 2 strip mines? Do you go after an orb? Do you strip mine, or do you recall for the soul ring? Because he's got 2 plowshares in his hand. Certainly the Hive is not helping things. Although it is his finisher ultimately, I guess. What do you do here? 1 or 2?
I think you do 1 because if you do get 2, what are you going to use the other strip mine for? I mean, you've already got a bunch of blue sources. Maybe, it doesn't matter. You also have Tundra, you have City of Brass. I don't know why, because, I mean, he also has 2 factories. So factories versus factories, that's fine. So I don't know what to use the other strip mine for.
Yeah, it wouldn't be probably a strip mine. It would be getting something like Chaos Orb.
Yeah, Chaos Orb.
Chaos Orb. But there's nothing really urgent besides the factory. And if he recalls for 2, it taps him down way lower. He's down to 5 mana.
Yeah.
Which makes him much more vulnerable to what I might do. And I've drawn half my deck.
Right.
And I haven't cast Demonic Tutor or Ancestral Recall or Brain Geyser or Mind Twist. There's a lot of heavy hitters left in the deck. He's got to know I've got some of them at this point. And so he's sort of clinging to this power sink, hoping that it might save his life somehow.
Yeah, and I wonder maybe that's the reason why, he kind of inadvertently signaled that he didn't draw efficient counter spells, and instead just was leaning on power signal.
Yeah, having to just play, and it forced him to play his hand out. Right. Over and over and over again. Right. So Jonathan's going to make the play that you recommended. He's going to recall for 1. The question is what does he tap to do it? This is extremely important and very consequential.
And it seems like he's going to discard that sword.
Yeah, he certainly doesn't need the swords. So he taps, looks like factory, scrubland, and island.
Okay.
Guess what?
There we go.
Guess
1,
what?
2, 3, 4.
That's 4 blue mana sources, and one of them is a sapphire.
Yep.
God, do I just inside when he did that, my heart just soars.
Just
and I say what?
Judge,
yeah, well, I say you have to declare your target.
Yeah.
I don't even care.
Yeah.
I know what he's doing, obviously, and it doesn't matter.
Right. Checking with the judge.
Yeah, and I explained to him that he needs to announce that he doesn't have to discard. This is actually a bit of a disparity in mechanics. Back in the old school days, in 94, 95, 96, etc., you actually had to discard as part of the effect of recall. Now you no longer have to, which makes the card way better. And he just points it at the library. And I remind him to throw away swords. And here we go, Sam. The play that I've been setting up for more than half the game. Tundra Factory.
And boom.
Bang. Down goes Sapphire. All of a sudden, 3 blue sources. Exactly what we wanted.
Yeah. I don't know if he realized perhaps that was maybe a misplay, a misstep, or he just was okay.
Yeah, I don't think that he probably didn't even think it would matter.
Because he knows what he has in his hand.
Right, but everything matters, right? Everything matters in these games. You saw in that game against Lauer. Every point of life matters. Every land you tap matters. You can literally lose an entire match because you took one extra point of damage in this format. It often comes down to that. Seriously, I've had, at this point, hundreds of games where I've been at 1, and I've still managed to win the game. Because you're not dead till you have the last life point.
Yeah, and you're referring to that semifinals game against Ifro.
Yeah, so, exactly. So I play a factory here, and now I have him locked.
Yeah.
It's checkmate, basically. The question is what do I Mind Twist for? So I see 6 mana up. I have Mind Twist in my hand, and he has 5 cards in his hand. However, I always account for ranges. And I realize, you know what? He could be playing with Power Sync. It's not crazy. It's not a terrible card. So how much do I Mind Twist for here? Do I go for the full 5? Or do I Mind Twist for fewer? And I realized very quickly that if I Mind Twist for 4, that one of 2 things happen. He either counters back with something, and I counter back, and his entire hand is destroyed.
Right.
The other play is that he just offers no resistance, and he discards 4 cards at random. But I have a counterspell in my hand. And since I know that he doesn't have a counterspell in his hand if he's letting Mind Twist for 4 resolve, although there are weird circumstances where if your entire hand is junk and you have nothing but junk and a counterspell, you just let the Mind Twist happen anyway. Because there's a 20% chance that you emerge kind of unscathed. You still got a counterspell. And sometimes that's correct. I assume that if he has a counterspell, he's going to counter here. So if it resolves and I strip 4 of his 5 cards, that last card doesn't matter. I have it covered with a counterspell. Right? It's inconsequential. Unless it was something exactly like Balance or Time Twister, and then he top decked a counterspell to protect it on his following turn. That's very unlikely. But if I Mind Twist for 4 and he has exactly Power Sync, guess what? I have 5 mana untapped that isn't a Black Lotus.
That's right.
Because I played Factory first. So I think about this for a while. Just thinking about what makes the most sense. He sort of adjusts his mana nervously. And I tap the Underground Sea.
Yep.
And a Sapphire. Factory and Ruby.
The Ruby, yep.
5 mana total.
Yep.
And I wonder if he knows what's coming here. He's got to assume something horrible's about to happen.
Not a lot of 5 drops in old school that are like this.
No, there aren't too many. It's definitely not a Sarah, and it's not a Morphling. That might have come years later. I played with Morphling after it got printed in Saga or whatever in 1999. You see me thinking about doing it for 5, and I realize, nope, bam. Death comes for you, Jonathan Salem. Mind Twist for 4. And he looks at his hand, and he's just... I'm sure thinking, Jesus, worst case scenario, right? Mind Twist for 4. So what do you do here? He has 5 cards. It isn't taking every card out of his hand. And several cards in his hand are quite good.
Right.
The Jam Day Tome is honestly amazing, right?
Yeah. If he survives this and has the Jam Day Tome, of course he plays the Jam Day Tome and rides the Tome to try to stabilize.
Right. And I might not have a counter.
Right.
Odds are that I do. I might not have a disenchant. I just disenchanted a Sapphire.
Right.
So I may not have a disenchant either. There's a reasonable chance that if he just lets the Mind Twist resolve, there's a reasonable chance that he might emerge with a card that's impactful that I actually have to respond to. So certainly that's the play, right? The other option, the only option that makes any degree of sense is casting Disenchant on Black Lotus, which is, I guess, all right, but totally inconsequential. And then you lose your whole hand. So the only play here is just take it on the chin and hope against hope that I have no follow-up. And that you keep the Tome or the Hive and you play it and you somehow manage to win. He does not elect for either of those plays.
Let's take a look. He is thinking about power syncing this.
He looks at his hand.
Yeah.
Oh, so uncomfortable. You see him just shifting around. I've been there before. You're just thinking, oh God, what do I even do? So he taps 4 mana, 5/6, and announces Power Sync for 5. And I go, okay, I guess I take 1 damage. And now you have no hand.
Yeah, you just pay the 5. 3, 1 damage, and
I go to 19.
Okay.
And he has no hand now, out of cards, against the deck.
And
not a good situation.
Top deck.
Rips a factory and instantly just beats me for 5. So I go to 14. And I have 3 of my own factories, so it's not a crisis, right? Those factories can handle his 3 easily.
Right.
And I draw back up. I believe I'm at 6 cards in hand, maybe. And I still have the counterspell.
Yeah. Yeah, you're wide open, so...
Yeah, I think almost about tapping all 3 factories. I realize that 1 will be fine, because I'm sure I've got a plowshares also.
Right.
If I leave 1 factory untapped, then the only attack that he can make that makes any sense is a sort of attack with 1 or maybe 2 and try to pump. It would actually be an attack with 1.
Right, to bump it.
And then I just blow it up with Swords of Plowshares. I don't even care. Exactly. And we just move on.
Right.
So I can tap 2 of the factories safely without risking any damage. Notice I tap the Sapphire over a land.
Mm-hmm.
And down comes Jam-Day Tome. And Jonathan has no cards in hand. And he draws 1 card. And he plays a Tome off the top.
Yeah. Wow. That's pretty good.
It's quite a rip.
Yeah.
Definitely. Particularly after 1 got discarded. And I have Counterspell. And he continues to pick up his lands.
Yeah.
And game 1 is over.
There it is.
Just like that.
Yeah. When you got nothing, you get your Jam-Day Tome, Counterspell. That's kind of it.
You get Mind Twisted, and then they follow up with the Jam-Day Tome. And you draw 1 of your 2 card engines right away, and it gets countered. The writing is on the wall. You're done.
Yeah.
And Jonathan knows it, and wisely just packs up. So we have plenty of, we have infinite time since the finals, but no reason to waste any more mental energy on the game. He knows that he's screwed.
Yeah.
And so we move on to game 2.
Yeah. Game
1 game to go.
Yeah, I wonder how he's going to sideboard.
Yeah, 1 game standing between me and this cool little shiny trophy. Magic Fest Las Vegas, old school champion. I'm eyeing it. I want it. I feel like I've earned it. I put in the time. And I only have 1 more game against Jonathan.
Yeah, 1 or 2, we don't really know.
Yeah, well, 1 or 2 potentially. Standing between me and that trophy, and I want it so badly. So that is the end of game 1. 1-0 in my favor. We're going to go to another video to discuss sideboarding.
Yep.
That video is coming up next alongside the 2nd game of the finals. Will there be a 3rd game? I guess we'll find out, Sam, in the next video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Sam, thank you so much for joining me for commentary for this one. And we will see you on the other side. Game 2 and sideboards coming up soon. Thank you for watching.